Death is the unyielding truth that binds us all, an inevitable, profound, and deeply intimate encounter with the finite nature of life. It arrives without warning, shattering the world we thought we knew. In its wake, grief emerges, often dismissed as something to fix or get over. But what if grief, in its suffocating pain, is not a burden to carry or something from which we need to move on? What if grief is instead a sacred invitation, an opening to feel more deeply, to connect in unimaginable ways, and to transform all that we knew to be true? I'm Laura Walton, and I'm so grateful you're here. Together, let's step into the uncharted terrain of death and grief, not as something to fear or avoid, but as a force that shapes us, breaks us, and ultimately remakes us. Let's meet it not with resistance, but with curiosity and courage. And let's do this on purpose. Welcome back to Grief on Purpose, the podcast. We are here today with another special guest, Brendan Shaw. Brendan, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura.
Yeah, and you are coming from upstate New York, right?
I am. Beautiful and super hot, at least this summer, upstate New York.
Yeah, is it really humid?
Yeah, it's been a July. It has been a July. We went from rain every day and into 90s and humidity all July. So
yeah. Lots of July. Is that where you're from?
Yep. Kind of born and raised in the Capital District of New York. Been here pretty much all my life. A lot of family, a lot of friends. So I've had, my sister's down in New York City, so that's like a little mini escape because it doesn't feel like anything like where we grew up. So I go down and visit her quite a bit, and we're pretty close. But yeah, born and raised upstate New York.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've seen some of your work on Instagram, which is how I became just very tinily familiar with who you are and what your work is. But I'd love for you to just introduce yourself. And to me, it always feels like a weird question, but just like who you are, like what your work looks like these days, what's important to you in your life right now.
Yeah, sure. So there's quite a bit there just when it comes to grief. I think most people will be able to relate to a lot of what I'm about to say, but I never thought I would be talking about this stuff. It was always something that happened to other people. I have experienced loss in my life in a more, we'll call normal way, grandparents and old age and things like that. But the reason we're talking, the reason you know me is because 3 years ago, I lost my brother, who's 2 years younger than me, to a murder. A homicide situation. It was somebody that he did not know, he never met, but that had previously dated his wife. And this person decided to travel across the country and plan this thing out. And he was unfortunately successful, threw his life away as well. So there's a lot of complications when it comes to stuff like that. The questions, the trauma, the whys, the reasons that don't exist, to be honest. So like I said, it's been just over 3 years. April was 3 years for me. And I want to say about 7 or 8 months ago, I was having a conversation with my sister, and we always have really deep, really good conversations, and would talk into the 3 o'clock in the morning. And at the end of them, we would joke like, man, I wish we had just recorded that conversation. Like that was such a good conversation. There was so much that just came out in that. And so we actually had joked about, should we start a podcast? Should we start something? Because for me, talking and flowing is a little bit easier to get out my thoughts rather than like journaling, for example. I know that's very helpful for some people, but for me, it was just talking. So that turned into the idea of, well, why don't you just like video journal, or come up with one topic and just talk. Those videos, I didn't want to just get lost in my phone and never see again. And my sister was like, well, you don't have a TikTok account. You don't know anybody on TikTok. Why don't you download that and just like house them there? No one will probably ever see them, and that's fine. That's not the point. Fast forward 7 months, and now we're talking, and people have seen them, and I continued doing it because it became very, very clear very quickly that there are a lot of people out there who really want to have that conversation as well. They want to hear a little bit of validating words. They want to hear that somebody else understands that loneliness that is inherent in grief. And that was enough for me to continue making the videos. If it's going to help anybody, if it's going to help one person, it seemed like that purpose was enough to keep me going and also help me as well along the way, because as a lot of people who can probably relate, when you lose somebody that's really important to you, your priorities shift quite a bit. What you thought you cared about before really, in a lot of cases, just doesn't seem to matter anymore. So we kind of float for a while. And I was definitely floating, going through the motions, doing my normal work that I couldn't care less about doing at that point. And this gave me a little sense of purpose, just helping people here and there. And it just continued to snowball. And I'm happy to be here and meeting you and talking with you about it.
That's so cool. So it just started as a way for you to process your own stuff for your stuff, like a personal journal in a way, and evolved from there.
Yeah, I just wanted to like get a couple of things off my chest, like little, and I just broke them down into bite-sized pieces. Let's just stick to one thing, write out some thoughts, write out a little script, video it, and then shut my eyes, hit record, just publish and never look at it again. Like I was like, I can't even listen to myself, can't look at myself. It was just, but yeah, that's how that started. So
yeah, I know the feeling on that. So how did people find you and start following you?
I guess TikTok is really, really good at delivering content to people who need to find it. Okay. It just was all organic growth. I think the first video I put out, I had like a couple thousand views on TikTok. I had no idea how TikTok worked compared to like Instagram, for example. That's a little bit more normal over there. Like you might get a little more views, I guess. But, I was like, whoa, why did so many people look at this? And I get a couple comments. I'm happy to go back and forth with people. And I was like, whoa, okay, that resonated with somebody. And that feels good that they got something helpful out of that. And I was like, I have other thoughts. I might as well make a video on that and just put it out there and see what happens. And that's just what I kept doing.
That's so crazy how it just snowballs from there.
Totally.
Yeah. But I love that you have that. So just without going too deeply into my side, my significant deaths happened like 18 and 23 years ago. So this is social media, smartphones, really. So, but in a weird way, in more recent years, when we do have these tools available, like I think you'll understand what I'm saying. I've been like weirdly jealous of people who have these different tools available to them in the earlier years of their grief, to be able to kind of like document that in a way that I didn't have, because now that enough time has passed for me, as time passes, things change. And so there's been oftentimes parts of me that would be so curious to look back on that version of me 15 years ago, 18 years ago, whatever, and see what that looked like and where my understanding was with things at that time. So anyway, a long way of saying, I think it's really cool that you do have these tools available and are using them as a way to kind of document your journey.
Totally get that. And I completely understand why, people are big on journaling or whatever medium works for somebody. But I wish I had done a little bit more of that in the beginning, because I know I was having like much more, that acute phase is, we'll call it a special time. Your brain is doing all kinds of weird things. And the thoughts I was having, and I thought to myself, there's no way I'll forget this feeling. This is or the specific thoughts around what's going on. But I think you do a little bit. I think you have to survive, because some of that stuff is pretty scary early on. So I do wish I had even just little notes or little videos to myself or voice recordings or something, because I thought about it at the time. I remember thinking about it and then shooing it away. I don't think you're going to forget this, Brendan. I think it's going to stick with you. And certainly some aspects have and haven't changed at all. And I think that's, different for everybody, different for every loss. But it's kind of an interesting thing. I am glad that I started doing it. I do think that when I started doing it, that was about the only time I could have started doing it, if that makes sense. I was like, I guess about 2.5 years in at that point. Any time before that, if I had tried, I don't think I would have been as effective. I don't think I could have spoken about it as well. I don't think my mind was clear enough. I was very foggy for a long time. On top of the normal grief, the brain fog we all hear about and experience when we lose somebody, there was also the element of like the criminal side of this. It took 1.5 years to even get to the trial. So you're trying to heal, but every month or whatever, you're getting an update from the DA's office. You're hearing this thing that sounds like not good news. It's just constantly like messing with your nervous system. So I think it took me a little bit longer than normal for that like initial acute phase to kind of go away and let me think a little bit straighter. But so yeah, I do think that when I started doing it was about when I could start doing it, if
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you definitely have to get to a certain place in your grief experience to be able to do that. So
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. So,
Yep.
so what is your brother's name?
My brother's name is Philip.
Philip.
Philip is, yeah, all his as he got older, all his coworkers and friends and wife, they all called him Phil. But he was always, to my sister and my parents and I, he was always Philip. I could never call him Phil. I couldn't do it. I was like, that's not your name. You're Philip. And with one L, he would want me to clarify one L is the correct way to spell it. Yeah, and he was the best. He was like objectively like the best kind of person, like we all know people like this, smart, funny, witty, charming, endearing, but super down to earth. Yeah, he was very successful in his job. He just made you feel like you knew him forever if you had a conversation with him. He's just the best kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys were pretty close.
Yeah, we did everything together. We're 2 years apart, like I said, so pretty much all the same friend groups, all the same sports teams, all the way through adulthood. He was looking for a house for 2 years or so, and during that time, he just lived with me and my wife because we were all so close. We were just a unit, and it was just easy. And yeah, that was I feel like some people would be like, "You live with your brother? Like, why don't you have an apartment? Why don't you whatever?" And he was like, "Well, why would I have an apartment? I have my brother's got this house, and I'm wasting money in an apartment. And to us, that made sense. To some people, it wouldn't have. But our relationship was awesome. Like, I feel incredibly, say it a lot, but I feel incredibly lucky to have had who he was as my brother, because I know a lot of people don't have that with their siblings, and we had it 100%. Like, he was my best friend. Like, just yeah, best
Yeah,
kind of person you'd ever meet.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome to have, and also very layered and complex, I imagine, then when you lose that.
Yeah. 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 You lose the one person I want to talk to about all of
Yeah.
this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like grappling with how could this be?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you know somebody at that level. Like, I know exactly what was going on. I know what he was thinking. I know. So that makes it kind of difficult in a lot of really complicated ways that you can't really imagine until you're forced into a situation like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many layers to it that, yeah, you would never be able to foresee.
Yeah.
How did you find out about his death?
So the day that happened, we were supposed to watch a Liverpool soccer game, which he had reminded me about the night before. And then we were going to potentially go golfing later that day. It was just a beautiful day in the middle of April, like beautiful weather, and we were going to take advantage of it. He wasn't supposed to be to work until about noon that day. He was going to work for a couple hours. And his wife went to work really early, 6:30 or something like that. They both did surgery. They were surgical physician's assistants. So they worked in the same group and had the same job, and they both loved that. But at about 12:05, his wife called myself and my wife and was just kind of like, "Where have you guys heard from Philip? He was supposed to be at work like 5 minutes ago, and 5 minutes is not a thing for my brother. He's not late. He's not late for work. He's very, takes his work very seriously. He's never been late ever." So I think for most people, if you heard somebody was 5 minutes late to work, you might blow it off. But for whatever reason, we immediately felt pretty panicked. Everybody felt panicked. And we didn't know, like, did he maybe get into a car accident on the way to work? He wouldn't be sleeping. Maybe he's really big into woodworking and he gets very, very into it. Got the headphones on, got the big loud machines. Maybe he was finishing something, maybe for the first time in his life, lost track of time, all these thoughts. But at the back of our minds, at least mine, I was panicked. And I had an appointment to go to, very quick appointment. So I left the house. I'm driving on a highway and I text my sister-in-law and my father because she asked my father to go over. Could you go to the house and check? We don't know what's going on. We don't know where Philip is. during that time, she had actually decided to call the police as well and just do a wellness check. Like, could someone get over there very quickly and figure out what's going on? He's not answering his phone. It's going right to voicemail. So now I'm driving on a highway and I get a call from my wife, who had just heard from my sister-in-law. And she basically said, I think he's dead. And I immediately, you don't know what to do with that information. Like, that's not in the realm of a possibility here. Like,
Yeah.
what are you saying right now? I immediately got off the next exit that I didn't even know where I was at that point. It was just so unsafe for me to be on the road. I do remember feeling that. So I got off, pulled into a gas station. I hear from my dad. He's like screaming, crying. He's the one who found him in his garage. And yeah, from there, it was pretty rough for a few days. I went down to my parents' house. We had to go to the police station. No one was even sure, like 100% sure, if he was gone, because just the information wasn't making it through clear. It was just, we found him. We don't know. They got whisked out by the police. So in the back of your mind, you're like, is there hope? I think there's hope. I have no idea. But right after the police showed up and my father was in the garage, my sister-in-law showed up and she immediately went and I guess felt for a pulse and all of that. She just went into, emergency mode, and she knew right away there were wounds and very clear signs that he was no longer with us. And very quickly at least my sister-in-law and I and my wife all pretty much knew who it was, only because there were some troubling statements made by the guy who did it. He had reached out, very, very classic, like domestic type situation, like reaching out, toying with somebody emotionally. He had done some of that stuff in the years prior, but there was no other person on earth who didn't absolutely love my brother. It was like pretty clear. So from there, you're just stuck with, how could this possibly be like our life, And it's a lot of work just trying to deal with those feelings, those emotions before you're even grieving the loss because of the trauma, the improbability of something like that happening in your life. So that I struggle with it all the time. I still struggle with it every single day. So it was and always will be a lot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sure I could see that. I think with a death, even under other circumstances, yeah, as you said, until it happens to you, it's outside of the realm of possibility for you, right? Like, and so when it happens, there's that initial, like, just wrapping your brain, how is this even possible? How is this happening to me? And I can only imagine with all the added elements of how he died and the legal things that were involved in that, like that has to muddy those waters 100 times more.
Yeah. Yep. And you're immediately dealing with media and you're learning things in the newspaper that you didn't even know yet and that sometimes weren't even true. But I don't wish that on anybody. I don't wish that on anybody.
Oh, I wouldn't imagine so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is any of that still ongoing as far as media, legal stuff?
We were the legal stuff, no. He'll be, New York State, 25 to life is the maximum. So this person was pretty quickly identified, pretty quickly apprehended, took a long time to get to trial. There's a lot there. He decided to represent himself at trial, like at the last minute, just to throw another wrinkle in, just to throw everybody off. Got to question my sister-in-law on the stand, that kind of thing. So the whole thing was just pretty horrible. But in the end, it was really just a massive waste of everybody's time because it was abundantly clear right off the rip. It was just, I always say that the district attorney, she did an amazing job, the ADA, but she could have her opening statement should have been her closing statement, and we could have just been done. It was just so crystal clear and embarrassing, to be honest. The entire process felt embarrassing. It felt small, you'd think you walk in a courtroom, something with like this heavy, something this tragic, something this horrible. And to me, it just felt like a show. It just felt small. That's the best way I can put it. It just felt like stupid. Like everybody in here knows, like, and why are we doing this?
Yeah.
It really was an overwhelming feeling of that. It just felt like every time he opened his mouth, he sounded stupid. He didn't know what he was doing. It was just, it was embarrassing.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I try to even imagine sitting through that in the state that you're in. That would,
yeah,
that sounds terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wasn't there for a lot of it. I didn't need to hear a lot of it. I didn't want to listen to or see this person speak. I certainly didn't need to be there for a lot of the evidence. But, you know, we did all learn things because the entire process, you know, an ADA is not working on behalf of us. It's not my attorney. It's the state versus this person. So they let us in on enough, but not all. So we didn't know quite a bit of information, whether it was, you know, timing or whatever evidence they might have had, people who were going to testify, like we weren't sure about. There was a lot to the story, but we didn't know how it was going to come together trial, and we didn't know until the trial came. So on top of everything else you're dealing with, you know, all we want to make sure is that like this all goes right, but we don't have the full story. So it's just another added horrible part of a already terrible situation. But yeah, I would be the grief side of this. I could have lost him in a car accident, by a heart attack. He could have gone in any way, and the grief side of losing my brother would be exactly the same. He still is the, you know, the loss of that person in my life is just immense. It's beyond words. That's like my person. He's my little sidekick, little brother that I've had my entire life and who we both looked after. But yeah, obviously adding some of the trauma and the actual way around what happened, pretty unfathomable. Sometimes I wonder how I'm standing when I really let myself go down that kind of spirally darkness that comes up. But here we are.
Here we are, somehow still standing, not only standing, but posting on social media.
Yeah. Something's good's got to come from it. You know, that's kind of the way, because if not, there's too much bad.
Yeah.
There's just too much bad.
Yeah, I say that halfway jokingly, but also that I do know that a lot of people do experience very significant deaths and very significant grief. And not that one is right and one is wrong, of course, but that just never are at a place where they can talk about that publicly.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts as to what makes you the kind of person who can talk about, or what makes your brother maybe, or what makes your experience the kind of experience that is one that you feel like you can talk about publicly?
Well, you're definitely right that it can go either way on that end of the spectrum. I know my mom doesn't want to, she doesn't really talk about that. She just can't. She'll just kind of fall apart. It's her son. I can't even, I can't imagine, right? Like, we're all grieving the same person in a very close-knit family, but I can't imagine being my dad in the situation, finding him, being the father. I can't imagine my mom. I can't imagine my younger sister who grew up with these two older brothers. I only have my perspective. I know who he was. I know how special he was. So I know what they've lost, but I'm not inside them. So for me, it's like, if I don't get it out in some capacity, whether it's in therapy, which I, do almost weekly and have since this happened, I need to get it out. I need to get at least thoughts. The thoughts I put out on social media, I think, are mostly overarching thoughts. They're not, I miss my brother and here's what happened. That's not what I post about. I try and post about the things that I have spent a lot of time thinking about that helped me, that I thought helped me. Being able to step back and watch myself grieving and being sad and noticing a thought and then thinking about that and realizing that seems helpful to me, to break it down into smaller chunks and just think about it and then get it out. That seemed like it was helpful. Again, that's how the video started, more as like a tool for myself. But then when I realized it was helping other people, I realized maybe these people are not doing that at all. And this might prompt them to think about this thought or this topic within grief a little bit deeper. And maybe that will be helpful. That's really all it was. I say to I met a lot of people in the grief space online. I didn't know there was a grief space online. I didn't like do research before. I just literally posted, and then I met people through that. But everybody is so unique. Everybody's loss is super unique to them, which makes it even more unique. And we all have our own thoughts and feelings about these things. We just do. So whether it's sharing on social media or writing poems or doing art, all of which I have met people, that's how they express their loss and their grief. I think getting it out of you in some way is kind of necessary. It doesn't have to be on social media. It doesn't have to be going and becoming a licensed therapist or whatever. It can be anything, and it can be just for you. But I do think it's important to explore what speaks to you in that realm, and then go and poke around and see what resonates, because you can't just be stuck inside yourself all the time. I do think that's long term pretty bad. I think that's not going to do you any help in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything about your grief thus far that's been surprising to you?
I think the most surprising thing is how bad it can be, because you couldn't know this. You couldn't learn this. You couldn't be given this without experiencing it. I think it's the same as falling in love for the first time or having a child, or these are things that until it happens, they're abstract. You can't, and losing someone at all, that's super important to you, whether suddenly or over time, or in my particular, it doesn't really matter. But until that first person in your life that is that important to you goes, you really can't imagine how bad that can feel. Or not even, I mean, it's bad, but the other things that come along with it. It's just so disorienting, and you can talk about it all day, but until you experience it, it was surprising. And again, that's part of the kind of stepping back. And that was what would be helpful to me when I'd be in like a really, really bad place. I'd be in it for whatever reason. The car seems to be a very common place for people to fall apart. I don't know if it's quiet. I don't know if your brain is operating it like just enough to not get into a car accident, but enough to like quiet down. And then you like in the car at night, sitting there by myself, when it gets really, really bad, I started getting in the habit of, again, stepping outside myself and kind of like watching it. And that really showed me like, wow, like it's shocking how bad this is, how deep you are going into this. And I could have never guessed. As much as that sounds ridiculous, right? Like, hey, if your brother is murdered in his house, that would be pretty bad, right? You still could not get there.
You can't fathom it.
You can't actually get there.
Yeah.
So that, I think, is the most shocking thing.
I get that. Yeah. Do you ever wonder what Philip would think or what he would say if he saw that this is what you were doing with it, and this is what you were doing in your life right now?
I think he'd probably be sad. I think he'd be sad, only because I feel like I had a lot of other goals and dreams and things, and they just don't seem to matter a lot. I think the things that we in general in society strive for, whatever that looks like for you, happiness, success, money, whatever the thing is, all of that stuff sort of like, it's like a curtain is pulled back and you're like, oh, none of that actually matters, does it? Especially now. Like, I used to say, like, early on, I remember saying this in therapy, I could become president and cure cancer and make $1 billion, and it would all feel pretty empty. It would all feel pretty like, I'm glad I helped some people, but like, man, how does that matter as much without my brother here and with what happened? So I'm sure he'd be proud that I'm not just like stuck in my bed and have given up on my life. But I think he'd still want me to at least pursue things that have that resembles happiness and success from the past, whatever that looked like in my life or what we talked about. I think he'd still want me to do some of those things, and I'm getting there. It's only been 3 years, but yeah, I don't know. He wasn't a big social media guy. He started an Instagram account for his woodworking. And I remember we had one post go a little virally, like, maybe 1,000 likes or something like that. But he was super, super good at woodworking. super, super good at it. Like got very, very good at it very quickly. And I remember him being like, having this like kind of boyish, like I'm kind of proud that people really liked what I put out there. And so maybe he wouldn't dislike it as much as I think, but yeah, he not the biggest social media person. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like your life really changed direction as far as what you were doing, and where you were spending your most of your energy really shifted direction with his death.
Yeah. I run a digital marketing agency with my wife, and we've been doing that for about 13 years. And I'm super proud of how we got there and what we do, and the fact that we took that step to be self-employed. But the work itself became, I think I realized like I really only did it. Money is better, and we're happy to have grown and things like that. But it just doesn't matter. Like it's hard to care if your multinational clients make another $1 million or whatever it is, whatever that it's hard to care when something like this happens. Very little true purpose behind it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are there other things that have maybe become more important to you that weren't before post Philip's death?
I wouldn't say necessarily more important, but I have an 18-month-old son, so he's been very healing. And really, all I want to do is like spend time with him and with my family and with people who really showed up and were there and are deserving of my time and vice versa. And I think most people can relate to that. I think most people want that, but the drive for like external stuff seems to have faded away. It just doesn't seem to be a very fulfilling route.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get that too.
Yeah.
Overall, how have you felt supported by people in your life?
Given the situation, I think people have been pretty amazing. Our community in general has really come out in full force in support of the family. We started a nonprofit, a 501c3 nonprofit in my brother's name. We've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for all different kinds of causes. We try and keep the money local, but all things that like my brother would care about or my family cares about or is relevant to what happened. So domestic violence, shelters, we're all animal lovers. So we give a lot of money to various animal shelters in the area. We have a couple of big scholarships that we've created in his name, one at the medical school where he became a physician's assistant. So we try and give back to things that feel good, that feel right. That feels good and that work feels good. It doesn't obviously fill the full hole that's in you with a loss like this. Again, and everybody handles everything differently. My dad is really has dove into that, the foundation. That's really right up his alley. He's a very social guy. He ran a business in our area for 25 years. So he knows a lot of people, and they've been incredibly supportive of him. And he's really run away with that. My mom, on the other hand, doesn't love to be overly involved. She loves that we're doing it, that we're able to give this money to all these deserving people and groups and people doing really good work. But again, it's kind of all over the spectrum. But in terms of support for us and the family, I think we've been very widely and fully supported.
Yeah. If you want to, you're welcome to share the name of that foundation. I know you emailed that to me before we.
Oh, yeah. The foundation is called the Phil with Love Foundation. Phil is PHIL. It's philwithlovefoundation.org. Philwithlove.org actually is the website. We host every year a really big golf outing. That's our big event. That's in August. I think we've already raised over $100,000 and we haven't even had the event yet. So people have been very, very supportive of what we're trying to do. They feel good knowing that the money, 100% of anything that we raise goes towards really deserving groups, people, causes. And it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work setting that kind of stuff up. But what else are we going to spend our time doing when we all feel very similarly in what matters and what doesn't matter now? So it does feel good to do. But yeah, if anyone wants to check it out, they can go to the website and you can just learn a little bit more about my brother. You can learn a little bit more about what we're doing. You can donate if you want. Yeah.
Yeah. I checked it out briefly and it looked really beautiful. And yeah, I work in the grief space. So the topic of death is one that is talked about a lot. I don't even know what it was, but there was something about seeing his face and the way it was set up and the way it was explained that brought me to tears. And so it was a
Yeah.
really beautiful sight.
Yeah. Yeah. I had to have my wife set that up.
Mhm.
Everyone's, they wanted to check how does it look? How does it look? And I'm like, I can only really look at photos and videos and things like that when I have to, or if I'm in one of those places where I'm already down. So let's go
Yeah.
look at some photos. Let's go listen to, yeah. I'm sure we all know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel any kind of connection with Philip?
I think that probably depends on the definition of connection, because that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Yeah. Maybe how would you define that?
Yeah. The thing with us is we were so close that I never noticed this before, but now in my own voice, definitely in my laugh, sometimes in the jokes that'll come to my mind, I'm like, that's him. Maybe it was always there. Maybe I'm leaning into it subconsciously. I don't know, but sometimes I'll hear something out of my own mouth and I'm like, whoa, like that was you. That was your laugh. Did I always laugh like that? I don't know.
Mm.
So it's hard to like decouple myself from him. We had the same sense of humor. I always said like we could be in a room full of a million people, and if something happens and we look at each other from across the room, like we know exactly what we're just tuned in 100%. He's the kind of like no one will ever make me laugh like he did. I'll never laugh as hard as I did ever again. I already know that because I had 37 years of proof that he makes me laugh harder than anybody on earth can. So he's everywhere with me because we're just so similar.
Mm.
We carry a lot of similar traits. Very different people, but very similar traits and ways of thinking. We're also very different in certain ways. He knows every single quote, actor, movie they were in, TV show anyone's ever. His memory was unbelievable. And I can watch a show and binge it for a month, and then you can ask me like what the characters. I'm like, I don't remember. I don't have room for that in my head. So sometimes it's funny because the connection can be there in moments like that where I'm like, if somebody says something that I know he'd know, he's the first person that comes to my mind. So in a way, even though it's not, I'm hearing his voice in my voice, it's actually the opposite. It still brings that sense of connection because I immediately go there.
Do you have any beliefs about death? What happens when we die?
Do I have any beliefs about death? I think I have gone through many beliefs about that particular question. If you had asked me before this had happened, I probably would have said, I think when we die and that's okay. And we kind of go back into the earth, into whatever it is. But now, and I don't like to think it's out of necessity or out of like protecting myself, because I can be cynical about that stuff. And I want to make sure I'm not just like seeing something because I want to see it. But we've had a couple of like family sign type related things happen where I can't just call it coincidence. There's like too many instances of things that I'm like, it's hard for me, even with a cynical mind, to push away. So I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's like an energy thing. We're all obviously made of energy. Energy can't be destroyed. I love all this science stuff. I'm good with that. So to me, it makes sense that there has to be something and somewhere for that energy to exist and reside once it's not in a physical body. What that is, who knows? And I'm sure like a lot of people who are in grief might be able to relate to. After this happened, I kind of dove very deeply into the world of near-death experiences. And when you hear enough of those accounts, I think you have to be super cynical to not think that there's something else going on. There's something more. There's just too many of them, and they are too similar sounding. And I would highly recommend that if someone listening to this is hurting and has not done that, that they go do that, because it can be a little bit comforting in some ways. It can take a little bit of pressure off. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not scared to find out either. I am very curious. So we will find out one day.
Someday we will. Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you scared of death before?
I definitely didn't want to die. I wouldn't say I was scared, but the thought of it now has completely changed.
Mm-hmm.
My son being born re-changed it a little bit, but I think when you go through something really, really heavy like that, I think it's pretty normal to not be scared of it anymore. It's almost like, well, he went through it, so I guess that means I can. I've now seen it up close and personal. I've been a part of it in a way that I never thought about it. And I think that definitely lessens the fear of it. For me, it wouldn't be the fear of it. For me now, it would be, I'd be very upset to miss out on my son's life. I'd be very upset for him at this point, if it were to happen today, to not know his father. And that would, all of that, those kind of human thoughts get in the way. But remove all that, and the thought of dying is no longer scary in any way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a very similar experience of that. And well, if he did it, then I can do it.
Yeah.
Not in a self-harming way, but just in a way, it just, the illusion of fear around it just lifted for me. So
Yep. Yeah. And especially, I mean, I thought about that a lot. And part of it in my particular situation is like, what happened and what he went through, he's not just dead. He didn't just die. It's a really, really horrible, terrible, violent situation that I still can't and probably never will be able to wrap my mind around. But it's like, well, if he can go through that, like I can handle pretty much whatever I need to handle.
Yeah, I can post on social media. I keep coming back to that because it's such a terrifying thing at first, at least in my experience.
Oh, 100%. When I used to hit, when I would hit like record, I would just stare. I would literally stare at the camera like, okay, now you're supposed to talk, as if there were already people watching. It was like a live, no one's even here, just do it. And it was so ridiculous for a long time.
Yeah. And then you post it, like throw your phone across the room.
100.
Never looking at that again.
I absolutely still do that. I definitely still. Yeah. I've just gotten better at like hit record and do it, but I still just like it.
Yeah. It definitely takes it takes something to do that.
It does. It definitely does. I was not in any way, shape, or form a social media person before this. I have my own personal account. It's a private account. I haven't posted on it in years. I just use it to scroll. I didn't even download TikTok until like the day before I posted a video. I didn't do any of this. So it's not like I found my rhythm. It's like this thing came into my life. I didn't ask for it. And it just felt like I need to get this out.
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
It sounds like you have quite a few things kind of in the works. Is there anything you want to share about what you're working on?
Yeah. Ironically, I was doing a TikTok live, and I was just chatting with some people. I probably had like 40 or 50 people in the room. They were sharing their stories. We're going back and forth. Sometimes that's really nice. I don't do it as often since the summer came, but somebody in that room asked if I ever had a sign. And I shared a dream that I had maybe a few months after this happened, 3 or 4 months after it happened. And I never dream, like ever. I haven't even had a dream since this happened. So over 3 years. And I shared this dream, and this person who hadn't been speaking they hadn't been chatting the whole time, jumps in and they were like, you should write a book. You should write a book based on that dream, and you should call it this. And they left the room. I never heard from them again, but they spawned the idea, and it was a really good idea. And I've just been slowly working on putting together some thoughts for a book based on this dream that I had, because it was so profound for me. And who knows when that'll actually be complete. I have tons and tons of pages written, But, somehow I think a book needs to be a little bit more cohesive and put together and polished. So we'll see if that happens anytime soon. But yeah, only reason I'm doing that as well is more for the community that has now been organically built around this content. If I can, like I said earlier on, help anybody through this pain and this story, then at least there's that is where I land with it. Like, I helped a stranger. They reach out in a DM and say, this video just like saved me today. How much more can you ask for? So I'm always kind of thinking of ideas, or I try and read every single comment that comes through on videos and try and get how are people feeling about things? What are people struggling with specifically within this? Like, obviously we're all hurting because of the loss of somebody, but like, what are the nuances underneath that? What are the trends? What are things that would be helpful for somebody to hear or read or see? And so I'll continue to make the videos, and I'll continue to work on this book, and I'll continue to do anything that kind of comes to me organically that seems like it could help, that whether they've been grieving for 3 days or 15 years. I think there's we need that support. I think moving forward, like once you've experienced that loss, I think in different ways, because it changes forever, but we'll always need tools and resources. And maybe someone grows out of who loved my content early on, maybe find somebody else who was talking about a different thing. And I think it's not only important that people continue to like actively heal, because this is almost like an open wound that you have to tend to over time rather than something that closes up. Maybe, at year 10, somebody else says, you know what, I have never heard somebody else. I've been consuming all this content. I've been reading Laura's book and Brendan's videos, and it's been helpful for a while, but I haven't heard this particular thing talked about. And now they can go and help somebody else in some way, whatever that is. Maybe it's just in local grief groups or whatever that might be. But I think it's kind of like our work to continue as we move forward to stay on top of that open wound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I often think of it as an open wound, and it's always evolving too, like for other people, but also for us too. It's always evolving.
100%.
I'm working on a book too. So I've been reflecting on that a lot, and where I am now is completely different than where I was 18 years ago, but I never could have foresaw that as happening, but it has.
Yeah.
And so witnessing that is really interesting, an interesting part of the grief process that I don't know that we talk about that much. So
yeah, totally. And like you said earlier, like you wish you had these kind of social media tools or back then. I am glad, and I am curious. I'm already curious. I think it's a helpful tool for myself, speaking personally, to be able to think 10 years down the road, because 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I was thinking 10 years down the road was a nightmare. Like the thought of getting older without my brother, the thought of looking in the mirror and being like an 80-year-old man and realizing that I've been on earth longer, that whole thing, those thoughts were really, really haunting for a long time. But I can now see little peaks of curiosity in myself about the future, which is good because for a while that wasn't there.
Yeah. And I think that's really important too, because I was in that place too, where even like if I had heard this conversation then, like parts of it would have probably sounded offensive to me. Like
100%.
I can't believe you could even fathom being in that place, right? Like it's such a different mindset to be in. Yeah.
Yep. At 100% relate to that.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like we could talk for a lot longer, but we won't.
Yeah.
But is there anything else that you feel is important to say today?
Honestly, I want to just quickly touch on what you just said, because if you are listening to this conversation and you're 3 weeks into this, you might hate everything you just heard.
Yeah.
And that's like, okay, that is totally fine. Grief and the content that people make around it, while it's all meant to be there as a helpful tool, we're all in different places when we make it, and we're all in different places when we consume it. So if something doesn't line up, don't be discouraged. Don't think like, oh, well, these people did X, they did something special. I don't know what it is. there isn't anything special. There's no timeline. Doesn't line up with anybody else's timeline. And if this particular conversation does not resonate with you for any reason, like, go find another one, and go find another one, and go find another one, because someone's will, and no one's going to advocate for you, like in any situation, like you will. So if you're not going to go and do the work and be curious and find the things and the people and the creators and the content and the tools that are going to be helpful to you, like, no one else is going to do it for you. So you owe it to yourself to at least go and stay open to the idea that there is someone having a conversation that might actually help you, even a little bit. Whatever that looks like, whatever that means, whatever the word help means to you, because there's no magic pill for this stuff. But there are people like you and I out here talking about it and trying to keep the conversation going, because it's a very isolating thing. And I think a lot of people get stuck in that. So I just hope that one foot in front of the other, and stay curious and keep looking for those voices or those, whatever that looks like to you, that is helpful.
Yes. Thank you for that. Yes, it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Brendan. I'm glad you just randomly posted a video on TikTok one day. And I'm glad that you continue to do so. And thank you for sharing, Philip, and your story with us.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad you found me. I'm so glad you reached out. So thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here with me, Laura Walton, and my incredible guest on Grief on Purpose. Your presence is a gift, and I'm so grateful you're walking this path with us. For more connection and resources, you'll find everything you need in the show description. To my guests, thank you for sharing your person with us today. It is truly an honor to know your story. I'm your host, Laura Walton. Until next time, be kind to yourself and remember you're not alone in your grief. We are here on purpose.